Hello and welcome. Use the chat to let us know where you are tuning in from. We have a real sort of bi-coastal author event happening tonight. Our author is on the West Coast. Her co-hosts are on the East Coast. So where are you? Let us know. So excited to meet Los Gatos. Hello, Mountain View. West Coast representing very well so far. And then here comes New York, Ballard, Chicago. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Tallahassee, Florida, hello. Oh, Germany. Wow.
Germany, wow, it's late there.
Philadelphia, Sammamish. Leah's mom. Leah, your mom represented again.
Always.
Thank you, Leah's mom, for tuning in.
Hi, Mom.
Carol, hello. Milwaukee, Chattanooga, Maryland. Welcome, welcome. We'll let a few more of you get tuned in and then we will get started. Let's see. All right, I think we can start. I'm Laura Hamilton. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I have a cookbook store in Seattle called Book Larder. And we do author talks and cooking classes. We're doing a little bit of that in person, but we are also continuing to do author talks on Zoom. And I honestly think that that's probably something that we'll continue to do even when we're not all sometimes wearing masks and potentially worried about catching something from the person sitting next to us. We will continue to do some Zoom author talks, because they let us do really fun events like the one tonight, where we might not otherwise get these three fabulous women in the same room together as easily as we can get them all together here. And we can welcome you from all over the country and all over the world. So thank you for being here. I am so delighted to welcome Erin Gleeson. She is the author, most recently, of the fantastic book, The Forest Feast Road Trip. She is in California, of course, and if you can see her on your screen right now when she starts to talk, if you have it on speaker view, you'll see her shortly. She's in a beautiful setting and enjoying the last bit of sunlight on a day like this. She is going to be in conversation and actually doing some demos for Passover with two of her friends, Leah Koenig and Rebekah Lowin. They are each going to sort of take turns demonstrating recipes after Erin talks about the book a bit. We will, of course, leave time for questions. So if you can please use that little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you have questions, that's the best place to put them, because that will make it easier for me to keep track of them. We also, if you would benefit from using captions for the talk, you can do that via the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen. You can turn them on, and you can also move them around on your screen if you so choose. We are recording the talk, and so it will be on our Book Larder YouTube channel within the next probably 48 hours. And so if you have to drop off early, or you want to watch it again, or you want to share it with friends, the talk will be available after this evening as well. And of course, the book is available at booklarder.com. I will drop a link to that in the chat so that you can order it from us and support the talk, ordering it from Book Larder. And thank you to everyone who's already done that. Lots of you have, so thank you. All right, I am going to stop talking now and turn this over to our three lovely cooks, Erin Gleeson, Rebekah Lowin, and Leah Koenig.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much for having us. I'm so excited to be here. Rebekah and Leah, you guys are the best. Thank you. So I thought I'd start out just by sort of giving everyone a little bit of a background on how I arrived at creating cookbooks, and a little bit about this new one. So Rebekah and Leah, feel free to like jump in and ask me questions as I'm going. But for anyone who is new to the Forest Feast, about 10 years ago, I left New York City and moved here to the woods. I live in the northern Santa Cruz Mountains in California. And I had been working as a food photographer in New York, and I studied photography and I taught photography at a college. And then coming west, it was sort of like starting over. We moved here for my husband's job, and I didn't really know anybody, even though I am from California, but a couple hours away. And I just sort of started this side project called the Forest Feast, where I was taking photos of food outside in the woods. I just sort of got bored of my kitchen table and started just walking around with a camera in one hand and a salad in the other hand one day. And that kind of became like my look. And I'm always really into color, and I was looking for the most colorful items in our farm box each week, and just started making really simple recipes because I'm very much a home cook. I did not go to culinary school. I went to art school. So I come at this with recipes that are almost just ideas, sometimes more than actual recipes, few ingredients, lots of colors. And I like that they are kind of a way for people to get started. Like, I like that I'm kind of offering you this simple idea, and I like when people kind of make their own additions and tweaks. And my hope is that people will be creative in the kitchen and use my recipe as a starting point. So I think the books are a little bit different because they're art book cookbooks. In my first book, I was photographing, like a kale salad on a mossy log or a quinoa salad on a pile of leaves. And I was, always, sorry, my son is here. Hi, Ezra. I was always taking photos of, our life at this little cabin in the woods where we ended up, and trying to keep it really colorful. But something that I had never done professionally was these watercolor illustrations, and I started adding them into the layouts of the recipes. As I have a visitor here, this is my son. I started adding them into the layouts, and I create all the pages in Photoshop. So if you can sort of see here a little bit, this is my handwriting right here, and these little watercolor illustrations, and I add the images are all together, sort of, this is the recipe right here, and it's a mix of handwriting and type and illustrations, and it's almost like a diagram that tells you, hopefully pretty quickly, how to make the recipe. And then there's always a finished dish shot. So the new thing about this book, my first couple of books are based out living at the cabin, kind of home-based books. My last book was a Mediterranean travel book. We went to Italy, France, Spain, and Portugal. And we wanted to do another travel book, but decided to do a road trip book around California. It actually started pre-pandemic, but continued right into it and seemed to be like a safe way to travel. So for this book, it's 10 different regions of California. We stayed in cool cabin-ish places. It's the first time that I've featured shots of the places that we stayed alongside travel photos. And of course, there's 100 recipes. All of my books are vegetarian, and this one is too. But the recipes in the book are sort of inspired by farms we went to and picked certain things. For example, nearby we went to a farm in Pescadero, California, and picked strawberries with these 2 women farmers. And I came home and made a strawberry caprese, sort of inspired by our day of strawberry picking with them. We visited a date farm in Southern California near Palm Springs, and that prompted a date shake. All kinds of different like ranch and winery and orchard visits that informed recipes. And then some of the recipes are also just informed by restaurants we ate at, different flavor combinations we tried that I came home and played around with. And that is the Forest Feast road trip. I think that's sort of an overview. It's the travel book, art book, cookbook.
Erin,
really easy.
I would love to jump in and ask you.
What did I miss, you guys? Can you ask me
first? Well,
anything
first
that I didn't cover?
I would. Oh, am I? Okay.
I'll show you a
Okay.
couple,
First, I just wanted to say
shots
that.
of the places that we stayed. Here's. Oh, sorry. I think I cut out there for a minute.
No, I think you're back.
Okay, sorry. Sorry about
I
that.
think you're good. No. I thought it was me. That's fine. I wanted to say, first of all, I love the book. I love you. I think anyone who hasn't picked up one of your books before needs to experience it. It's so beautiful for people who love art and creativity. The watercolors are so special. And as a road trip lover, I am particularly in love with this book. But I wanted to ask you, sort of know the answer, but for others, how many road trips were included in this book? Like, is it all about one road trip? Did you have to take many different road trips? Would love to hear that.
Yeah. So we did one large road trip that was 3 weeks, and it was about 2,500 miles without leaving the state of California, which is amazing. But we went all the way south and almost all the way north. And I think one of the big surprises was the Eastern Sierras. I had never been to the eastern part of California, the desert, and it was just like this amazing surprise. We ended up by chance at a lavender farm and stayed in one of their cabins. It was this amazing woman farmer who we met and picked plums with and gathered eggs with at her coop. And it was just a really fun stop. So after that, sorry, I think I cut out again, maybe. I'm sorry. So one big 2,500 mile road trip and then several smaller ones that were kind of like long weekends over the course of about a year and a half. Yeah. And with 2 little kids along the way. I was pregnant with the third good chunk of it.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that too. First of all, I remember you and I have known each other for a long time, Erin. I think I wrote about you when you were like first starting the Forest Feast, and it's like 10 years ago. And I remember thinking like, what you're doing was so special and so different than anything I had ever seen before. I think you've really like blazed a trail of like combining visual art and food and just lifestyle. And I think it's a really amazing kind of combination. And I wanted to ask you about those travels. Like, was there a moment that stands out to you that really kind of like defined the experience, or like was there like a moment when you were with your kids or something and you realized you were like creating a core memory for them or something? Like, can you just share a memory like that if you could?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know if I cut out while I was saying this or not, but I think the nice part about road trips is that you kind of have this plan of where you think you're going to go and what you think you're going to do, and inevitably driving in the car you kind of happen upon things. And I think that was sort of like the magic of the road trip for us, was driving up the eastern part of the state. And we were going to do 2 long drive days, and we didn't have a place to stay in the middle because I couldn't find any Airbnbs around there, or Verbos or anything that was like cabin-ish that I wanted to take photos of for the book. And so we said, okay, we'll just stay in a hotel, roadside motel as we're like driving north for one night. And then just by chance, like on the map, John, my husband, found like on the map it said like a ranch. And so he tapped on it and they actually had a website. And then we went to it and they had cabins. And so we called and they had one. And it was just this woman. She actually grew up like a mile from where I currently live, which is bizarre. And she moved to the Eastern Sierras. It's Lone Pine, California. And she bought this piece of property like 20 years ago, and it's all rocks, and it's in this like amazing canyon that overlooks the mountains, and the colors of the desert are so incredible. And we only had one night there, but it is so memorable for me, and it was such like a magical place. But she greeted us. There was nobody else there. She helped us pick plums from her tree and gather eggs from her coop for breakfast. And we picked lavender. She told us that she likes to bake with the lavender, and we bought a little jar of her dried lavender, and I brought it home and ended up making lavender shortbread for the book. I've had a shortbread recipe in all of my books, so this was my chance for the lavender shortbread in this book. But there was such a nice story behind it. But anyways, it was just like this magical spot that we never would have found had we not just been driving through and looking in that area. And there's this creek that went through it. We like put our feet in the creek in the morning, and she told us about some natural hot springs that were a short drive away, just a field in the middle of the desert. And you kind of had to know the mile marker of where to park and walk down this ramp, and suddenly we're at these natural hot springs in the middle of the desert thanks to meeting her. So I think that was I love the things that you happen upon, and that was a pretty cool spot. I would definitely go back there. My mom doesn't really like the desert, and I think that's why we didn't really travel to the desert very much growing up. We always went to the coast or to the mountains. So that was like a discovery for me, even being from California. I didn't really know it existed. So yeah.
I would love to ask you about the recipes themselves. Are these recipes intended to only be used, while you're on a road trip, or can they be enjoyed all the time? This is another question that I sort of know the answer to, but I just am excited about the recipes and the book, and I want everyone to know all the details.
Yeah, good question. So there's a mix. Some of them would be perfect for packing on the road. There's a quinoa salad that I'm going to demo in a few minutes that would be great packed up. It lasts well, like in a Tupperware or a jar. There's a lentil and grain salad that I made a lot I would put it in our ice chest in a big jar, and it lasted for a few days. It was really good when traveling. Also, like kid car snacks are important. There's some blender muffins. You just put all the ingredients in the blender. They're gluten-free and sugar-free, like refined sugar-free. You just put everything in a blender and then you pour it into the muffin tins. And we made those for traveling. They're good for the car because they're not too crumbly. And then there's these tahini balls, which are also pretty good in the car because they're not too crumbly. Sort of like a little energy ball, granola bar, but in the shape of a ball. They're nut-free, so you can send them to school. But I would say the majority of the recipes are just sort of like inspired by California ingredients and inspired by our farm box that comes to our house. And they're things that I would make more like on a weeknight or when I'm having people over. So, yeah.
I'd love to jump in with one more question. I'm also realizing Rebekah and I are dressed in like the New York City tuxedo.
Oh,
We're both
I know.
wearing like all black and whatever, and you're like in this gorgeous Technicolor, like you're the Wizard of Oz like land, and we're that didn't go that way on purpose, but I love it. I want to hear, just as a fellow recipe developer and cookbook author, I'm always curious to hear about people's process with developing their recipes, sort of. You've told us a little bit about what the recipe is, what inspired them, but what's your process like when you're in the kitchen, or do you cook outside? I mean, do you have a grill? Like, how do you kind of come up with these delicious recipes?
Yeah, so we do cook a little bit outside, mostly just when entertaining though. I have like a single burner that I put right here on this bar, and like our deck and our table is just right over here. And so sometimes I'm looking for items that I can, well, usually I'm not prepared when people actually arrive. So I'm like, okay, I have to keep cooking. I'll just take it outside where we're all going to sit and I can talk to people while I prep. But, you know, in general, for like coming up with recipes for the book, you know, it's all inside. But while we were traveling, I took lots of notes on things that I was eating or things that we were picking. And I just had like this long list of notes in my phone. I would just like type every time I'd see like a salad, I'd be like, oh, goat cheese and cilantro. I'm gonna write that down. That looks good. And then I'll go home and like play with that combination somehow. But some of them are recipes that I've been making for a long time, like the strawberry caprese. Like I've been making some variation on that for so many years that I kind of like redeveloped it for the book after we visited that strawberry farm. But yeah, pretty much I'm like writing down ideas and then coming home and playing with them. And often like the playing with them is when people come over, because like when can I make, you know, a large veggie rich dish that serves 6 people, because my children might not eat it. So it's often like when people are coming over, I'll use it as an opportunity to make like a larger batch of something, or just for weeknight dinners. And I'm just kind of experimenting and then writing down and making it a couple times myself. And then in the past, I've always had like a kind of core group of friends and family that helps me recipe test. Leah, I'd love to know how you do the recipe testing too for your books. But this is the first time that I actually put it in my newsletter. Like I have a free email newsletter that I send out regularly, and I put in there, is anyone willing to volunteer? And I thought maybe I'd get a few people willing to make some recipes. And I got this overwhelming response, and I emailed my editor. I was like, I have all these people that want to make the recipes. I don't know what to do. And she was like, let's just do it. Let's have them all do it. So I broke all the people into these groups. It was about 50 people. So not like a ton of people, but it was about 50 people. And we broke the recipes into these different groups. So not all the recipes were going out into the world, but people were getting access to 3 or 4 recipes at a time. And anyways, that feedback was amazing, because it's just the hardest part about knowing if your recipe is going to work is like, will it work in lots of different types of kitchens, different, you know, equipment, and also in different countries and different cities where certain ingredients aren't available. So if people couldn't find a certain thing, I would just like substitute it or get rid of it, and just try to adapt from people's feedback. Yeah. How do you deal with recipe testing, Leah?
Sorry, I muted myself because I'm right next to a window where sirens were going by. Actually a similar process. I have a million spreadsheets and Google Docs, and like each recipe has its own little document. And when I test it, I make like copious notes, and then I test it again with the changes, and I get the recipes to a place that I feel pretty comfortable with them and happy. And then I also reach out over Instagram and my newsletter and stuff to get volunteer recipe testers. and have also been overwhelmed by the response. People love to volunteer and to help cook, which is so lovely. So I've also found that the feedback that they provide, even if it's like, this recipe turned out great, is so helpful, because I know that it's not just one kitchen that it's going to work in. It's, it'll kind of go across other kitchens. And when I always tell people, like, don't be shy, give me negative criticism, because that will allow me to change the recipe now before it's like printed in a book. So yeah, people who volunteer to do it are super helpful. And I always say recipe development is one part science and one part poetry, because there's like the science of getting all the amounts correct, but then there's also the poetry, which I think for you comes out partially as visual poetry, right? Like showing how it looks, and your painting and all of that. But for me, I use words to say, like, this is how it's supposed to feel or look or smell like at a different stage of the recipe, because I'm not there with somebody. So you want to be able to like find the right poetic language to communicate the science of how the dish goes. But I love that you have like all of the like little arrows and like the little drawings that go in with the text. Like, to me, that's just such a genius way to share a recipe. I love it.
Thank you. I think I'm sort of a visual learner, and it makes sense for me to see the recipe visually like that. Not everyone learns that way, but yeah, thanks. That's how you did it, though.
I have one more question for you, which is, what is in front of you and what are you going to be making? It looks so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so given the timing of a spring book launch, and given my own, sort of preparation for thinking about Passover that's this weekend, I thought it starts on Friday. It's Friday and Saturday are the two Seder nights that at least my family celebrates. So maybe I'll do a little intro to thinking about Passover and food for a moment, and then lead into all this. So Passover is interesting. So I had a little consulting session with my rabbi today to go over this. My husband is my rabbi, but we were talking about how Passover is unique because the food is such an integral part to the holiday, and Passover is one of the home holidays. A lot of the other like big Jewish holidays are celebrated at the synagogue or at temple, and Passover is very much about the home. And we use this book called the Haggadah, which means to tell, and it's to tell the story of Passover. And so for 2 nights in a row, or that's what our family does, we have these big meals where everybody has a copy of this book, and we go around and we tell the story of Passover, but it's all very much related to the food. So at certain parts of the story, you eat certain things that symbolize different parts of the story. So for example, there's the Seder plate that has a few specific items of food on it that are part of the story. And there's like the maror, which is the bitter herb, which when you eat it, you're talking about like this sort of like bitter and harsh part of the story. And in a way, you're kind of like eating, and it's like this like sensory feeling of what the story is about. It's like you're eating the history. And so I just love that food is such, it's a big part of every Jewish holiday, really, but it's really quite integral to Passover. And I love that. It's such a fun part of being able to enjoy the food and the story together. So there are certain foods that we don't eat at Passover, like grains, because it has to do with leaving in a hurry. The Jews left Egypt in a hurry, and there wasn't time for the bread to rise. So we don't eat bread as part of that. And instead we eat matzah, which is like a cracker, and several other foods. But we get rid of all the grains in our house for a week during this holiday. But one grain or grain-like item that we eat now is quinoa. So quinoa, I guess, is not technically a grain because it doesn't get leavened. I think it's maybe technically like a berry. It doesn't grow on grass the way like rice does or other grains do. So it's considered in a different category, and it's acceptable for a lot of Jews. We're Reform Jews, so we eat quinoa during Passover. So I have a quinoa recipe in the book, and I thought I would riff on it. Quinoa is something that our family makes every year for Seder. So my family has this big Seder meal on the second night, where there's about 40 people, and every year my mother-in-law puts me in charge of decorating the quinoa. So she usually has 3 different types of quinoa salad. There's often like a tropical inspired one with coconut and pineapple. There's another one that has some dried fruits and nuts, which I'm going to do, and there's another one that has like some chopped fresh vegetables like cherry tomatoes and bell pepper and onion, things like that. So we have 3 different types of quinoa, and then we decorate the top with fruit and nuts to kind of make it beautiful. So I'm going to do that for you. I'm going to do the fruit and nut inspired quinoa dish. But let me show you the one in the book. It's called the Coastal Quinoa Salad. And I like this because while some of the ingredients in this dish are not kosher for Passover, this is a good one for a road trip. So it's got some corn and tomatoes and curly kale, purple cabbage, chopped cilantro, and sunflower seeds. And then you kind of dress it with lime juice and olive oil and a little salt, and it travels very well. So you can put this in, you can make it ahead for a dinner party. You can keep it in the fridge for your weekday lunch, or you can just have it for a weeknight dinner. So I'm going to riff on quinoa salad. So on this tray, these are some of the items that we often use. I don't know if you can see, but I have currants, almonds, pecans, pine nuts, which I had to look up because they're kind of seed-like, but I think they are kosher for Passover. I know we use them. Some dates, dried peaches. You could also use dried apricots, dried cherries and cranberries, golden raisins, slivered almonds, and then I picked a couple edible flowers from the garden too that are fun to put on top. So the idea, I mean, so I feel like with all of my recipes, my hope is that I present something that's so easy that you're like, oh, okay, I think I can actually make this. There's few ingredients, so I think I have time for it tonight, and I'm just going to try it. And I love the idea of trying to offer ideas of ways people can feel creative, like just at home in general, but also in the kitchen. And I think this is like a really easy one. And it's also fun to get kids involved in this. But what my mother-in-law, Wendy, asked me to do for the last, like, I don't know, more than 10 years, is use these different items and just decorate the top. So you can totally be creative and do whatever you want, but I'm going to start with thinking about kind of like a floral pattern. I'm going to put a dried peach in the middle. I'm going to put some halved pitted dates all around the edges, sort of like a flower. That's going to be our centerpiece. And then I like to think about just kind of like lines coming out from that, almost like a sun, like rays of sun, and thinking about the different shades of the items. Some are dark, like the currants, some are light, like the pine nuts, and sort of alternating them. I would love to ask everybody while I'm doing this, I'll show you the finished result, but maybe in the chat. And also I would love to hear from you, Rebekah and Leah. What kind of Passover dishes are very unique to your family, or things that your family makes every year? I know there's like the common things like, you know, matzo ball soup, gefilte fish. Leah, I love how you put the herbs and the edible flowers on your matzo ball soup this week. I saw that you did that for Food and Wine magazine. That was so beautiful. But I don't know, do you guys have some different family traditions? I would love, as I'm doing this, maybe in the chat, and you guys can share.
Sure. Well, well, the last 2 years have been weird because of COVID, obviously, but in normal times and this year, we often go to my in-laws for Passover. So I definitely help to cook, but I'm not necessarily like the creative director of the Passover Seder, kind of like you go and you have your dish. But during the middle of the week, I actually just shared this on my newsletter this week. But I have a newsletter called The Jewish Table. And I often find that we spend so much time thinking about what to serve for the Seders that we forget that Passover is actually 8 days long and you have to feed yourself for the rest of that time. So one thing I really like to make is a salad niçoise, like the French-inspired salad niçoise, because with just a few tweaks, you can make it 100% kosher for Passover. It's fresh, it's filling, it's bright. So that's, funnily enough, like a traditional French dish that has no real connection to Jewish tradition has become very common and like traditional for my family. So that's one.
I love that. I love it because also it's like maybe it's not even just you at home, because like the day after Seder, I know all of us are still together and we're eating leftovers and things, but it's nice to have something special that will still feed a crowd, even if it's not part of the Seder.
Totally.
Yeah. I
I
saw the
love
photos.
And I love that. And I also love the Jewish table. So everybody should sign up. And there's actually somebody in the chat who just said that they're using the 3 recipes from your newsletter. So that's amazing. And yeah, I'll read a few others from the chat. People are saying that this year they're having a vegetarian Seder. So that's really perfect for using this book. And someone says they have Passover picnics, which I love. And then as for me, my family always makes maror from scratch, which some people do. It's not just us, but it's definitely like an event because if you've never dealt with raw horseradish, like the root from the supermarket, it is so potent and strong. Like when we blend it up, it is so intense. And like when I was growing up, my dad would always throw it into the food processor and we would all like run screaming from the room. So that is definitely my most memorable Passover food that comes out every year. And yeah, besides that, I mean, definitely going along with the idea of you have to feed yourself for many days. It's not just about the Seder. I really love a piece of matzah with butter and salt, and that's it for all the creative things that I post on my blog. I really just like it's super simple. That's just my favorite.
Although, Rebekah, I have to shout out, if you guys aren't following, well, all 3 of us, you should follow us on Instagram, but Rebekah's Instagram is so beautiful. And she posted recently this reel for matzo pizza that she used like little cherry sized mozzarella balls to make like a little flower pattern on the matzo pizza. And it was so lovely. And it just made, like, it just elevated the whole experience of matzo pizza, which I think of as being, if you don't know matzo pizza, it's literally matzah with sauce and cheese on it in an oven to mimic pizza during this time where we can't have bread or dough. But you just elevated it to this gorgeous level. So I would tell everyone to go check that out.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I would say I elevated it aesthetically, and it's still matzah pizza, but you gotta take what you can get. I mean, it's still matzah with tomato sauce, but delicious and better with a flour. And there are also some questions in the chat, but I think we're gonna save those for the end. Is that correct, Erin? Or do you want me to read any of those? I think we'll wait.
Whatever you think. Whatever you think. You want to take save them for the end? Okay, let's save them for the end.
We'll save them for the end, just because there's a lot, and I want to, be fair.
Here, I'm going to sort of finish this up here, and I'll show you, and then we can move on to the next.
Erin, I'm curious, is the quinoa itself steamed in water or broth, or how do you make the actual quinoa?
Yeah, sometimes I make it just in water or vegetable broth. And then I think, so usually I would make the quinoa salad itself like in a separate bowl. Like I make the quinoa, let it cool, put it in a big mixing bowl with all the ingredients and just a little bit of olive oil if you're making it way ahead, like we usually do for a big meal for a lot of people. And then right before we're gonna plate it, I would add the dressing. So, sometimes it's usually like an olive oil and vinegar and orange juice type of dressing, something really light and simple, but quinoa like soaks it up so quickly, so much that I think it's good to try to dress it right before you serve it if you can. I mean, obviously this takes a little bit of time, but like just as late as you can, dress it. And you can sometimes like drizzle a little bit more on the top before serving it so it's not too dry. But yeah, that's it. So I'm going to stop here. I feel like I could go on forever. But basically I just did sort of like a floral pattern with peaches and dates and dried cherries and pine nuts and a few currants. I feel like I could just keep going. Maybe I'll put some of these nasturtiums were just from our garden. I feel like anything with edible flowers makes it a little bit more fun. Maybe I'll put this on the side.
Can you hold it just a little bit closer to the screen when you're done so we can see?
Absolutely. It's very simple, and I feel like you could just keep going with this, but
oh, it's beautiful.
That just makes it a little bit more festive, right? And you can play with all the different, I think really alternating the light items and the dark items makes it even prettier. So there you go, quinoa salad. All right. So Leah, Are you ready?
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that was so beautiful, and I'm deeply embarrassed that you are sitting in this paradise, and I'm literally in a random office at my synagogue because my daughter's bedtime has been wonky lately, and so I was going to do it in my kitchen, but I was just getting the vibes that I had to get out of my house, or it wasn't going to happen. So I'm in like a random office at my synagogue. But what that means is the recipe I'm going to demo is so simple and so straightforward that you can do it literally without a kitchen. All I needed was a microwave. So this recipe that I'm making is hardly a recipe. It is inspired by something that is in my cookbook, The Modern Jewish Cooking, which is came out in 2015. And in the book, I make chocolate dipped figs. So dried figs dipped in chocolate, sprinkled with a little bit of sea salt if you want, or you can sprinkle it with whatever you like. But that recipe, again, like this is something that I usually make to as like a +1 for whatever other desserts I'm making. Like I'll make cakes and some cookies or Matzo Toffee or whatever. And this is like that extra little sweet nibble. But it is actually inspired by the chocolate dipped apricots that my mom, who is on here tonight, hi Carol, hi mom, who she always made them for Passover when I was growing up. And of all the Passover desserts that I remember, that's what I remember the most, because you get these like kind of like fat, yummy little chewy, jammy apricots, and you dip them in chocolate, and then you put them in the refrigerator and the chocolate hardens. So you have this like snappy chocolate shell. It's almost like a magic shell, like on an ice cream cone with the jammy apricot. And it's just like, it's 2 ingredients and it's completely like magic how good it tastes. So I'm gonna riff on that tonight. What I have here, this was the only cooking that was involved tonight, is I chopped up some bittersweet chocolate. You could use semi-sweet or whatever. You could use white chocolate, whatever you like. And I melted it in the microwave. So you could also melt it over a double burner where you heat up water and then you put chocolate in a aluminum pan over the water so it kind of indirectly melts the chocolate. But if you have a microwave, literally like 20-second bursts, stir in between and you're good to go. And then what I have tonight is some apricots, dried apricots. I don't have figs because I didn't get a chance to go to the store today. I was going to also do figs, but the combination of fig and chocolate is like, again, go to France, it's classic. I have some dried peaches, which kind of go along with your theme of your quinoa. And I also have one of my other favorite things to dip in chocolate, which is orange segments. You can also use clementines. My kids really like this one. You can obviously do the classic strawberries, but it's not really strawberry season yet here in New York, so it kind of felt like we'll save that for a different time of year. So all I do is you can either dip directly into the chocolate, and I like to dip about halfway. I'll show you when I'm done. Or you can take your spoon. I'm talking about this recipe as if there's technique involved. There's no technique involved. Anybody can do it. And it's very impactful as a recipe. It's a bang for your buck. People always love it. This peach kind of looks almost like a faux black and white cookie, which is kind of fun. That's actually a nice generous sized dessert too. But one funny story that I will share, I don't know, I'm going to kind of swear accidentally, so apologies in advance, but it's going to be Yiddish swearing, so I think it's okay. Oh, sorry, there's a New York City alarm going by. So when my mom was growing up, her family always kind of made fun of Passover desserts because they're pretty bad. They're like dry sponge cakes. And you're just like things that were not very delicious. I think we've come a long way in the world of Passover desserts. There's really good options now. But they used to call it pesadrek. My mom's probably laughing. So it's a play on the word pesadic, which means kind of like kosher for Passover, and the word drek, which literally means like crap. So they would call Passover desserts pesadrek to kind of make fun of how bad they were. And my father, who wasn't Jewish, I guess at some point my mom told him that, but she didn't really I don't know if she told him what it meant. And so he came into a family celebration for Passover to a Seder meal carrying the dessert, and the door opened and he said, "I have the Pesadrek," and everybody lost it because he didn't know that he was kind of swearing. And anyways, fun times, family stories. But this is also a nice recipe because you can really scale it up or down as much as you want. You can melt 4 ounces of chocolate, 6 ounces, as many as you need to dip. And it's also a really fun one to get the kids involved with, as long as you can let go of the fact that they're everything's going to be covered in chocolate, even if they're really neat about it. So yeah, and I will show you, these are not styled in any way, but what you would do, you can just see what they look like. You would put them in the fridge for only 15-20 minutes, maybe a half an hour, and the chocolate hardens up, and it's just a delicious, like I said, a +1 for Passover. So it's not something that you have to really plan for in advance or put that much thought into. It's just a lovely kind of extra thing for your Passover sweets table, or for anytime. They store well in the fridge for a little while, so it's nice if guests come over or snack after school. And I picked them because I felt like they sort of fit into the Forest Feast vibe of just simple, fresh, fun, using the flavors you have around you, and making something special out of them. So that's what I got.
Love it. Thank you, Leah. I want one. I want to get one.
I love those. I really want to just make them before Passover, and I might. All right. Well, Erin, am I okay to take it away?
Please do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was really funny what was just said about, I chose this recipe because it's the Forest Feast ethos, and it's fresh, it's accessible. What I'm going to make is far from fresh in that it's made from brown sugar and butter. But you know what? You need some of that at Passover too, sometimes. So I'm going to breeze through this. And if you want the full recipe, it's on my blog and you can find it through Instagram. But basically, I wanted to show you all my version of Matzo Toffee. I take the classic Matzo Toffee that I'm sure you've made if you celebrate Passover, because it's delicious. And I just add a little spin on it by piping names in chocolate so that it becomes an edible place card. So the top half is toffee and the bottom half is a name. And I would like to earn extra credit for the what I wrote on these place cards. I wrote Forest Feast Road Trip. So I'm going to try to show you. I think it might be backwards. I don't know. It's backwards on my screen. But I'm proud. Not my best chocolate penmanship, but that's okay. So I can't show you how to make these, start to finish because it would take a very long time. So I thought I would just give you a quick tip, and then we can get back to the fun Erin conversation and asking questions. But some of you bakers out there might know this, but I get a lot of questions about how to pipe neatly with chocolate. So again, just to show you I just smushed it, but that's okay. So the top half of this is the toffee situation. I just covered it with some sprinkles. And then the bottom half is where I pipe a name, usually in cursive, and usually it's beautiful and actually a name. And so this is what I'm talking about right now. So I just want to show you this trick that maybe you already know. I take a cup, I put a plastic sandwich bag. You can also use a piping bag or any eco-friendly alternative, because this is Forest Feast time and I can't believe I just brought up sandwich bags. But you throw it in the cup and then you press down so that the pointy edge part of the bag is in there. And this makes it really easy to fill the bag with whatever you're using to pipe. So for me, that's melted chocolate chips. Maybe you'll use candy melts or some other kosher for Passover situation. If you need to do that. And so I have the melted chocolate here, and I'm going to not do that in the air so that there isn't a terrible accident. But you basically can just, I'll bring it back over, but you can basically just spoon the chocolate into the bag. And then when you pull the bag out of the cup, it's already somewhat ready because it sort of falls to the bottom instead of like, smushing up and overflowing. And then all you have to do, and of course, this is for people who are not baking pros like me, who aren't going to use a piping bag. So you probably have this at home. Then you just take a pair of scissors and you just cut a very small hole off the end of the corner, because you can always make it bigger, but you can't make it smaller, of course. And then you get to work piping. And I've included a lot more tips again on my blog. So if you have no idea where to go from there, I've got you covered. But yeah, that's the basic gist of it. And I think that's it for me. I mean, that was kind of quick, but it's very simple.
I love it. Thank you. Will you hold one of them up close one more time? I want to see
Yes.
for your piping. Yeah.
Let me pick. Okay,
That's
I'm
so
going to do this
beautiful.
one. I mean, that is a little bit intimidating for you to say, but yes, this is my
No, that's so pretty. I love it.
I love that.
this is my like quickly after work pipe some letters work. But yeah,
It's such a special way to like welcome people to the Seder, to give them a place card that isn't going to just get like crumpled in their lap, that they could actually like nibble on. I love it.
thank you. Yeah, I think it's really fun. And I've done a few different styles of matzo place cards. So I have like a stamped one with, edible ink. I've got this one. There's all sorts of options. So really fun and a little bit different.
Oh, that's so cool.
Thank you.
We have quite a few questions. If you wouldn't mind, I'm trying to get as many of them as I can out of the chat. If you have further ones, if you could please use that little Q&A button, it will just make it a little bit easier for me to track them and make sure that I get to everyone's. So there was one question, Erin, about whether or not your family eats vegetarian all the time.
Yeah, so we're vegetarian at home. And I tell the kids that, if they're at a birthday party or somebody else's house or whatever, and they're serving something that they want to try, they can. So that's sort of the way I grew up too. That's how my family did it. And yeah, like I very rarely try anything, but sometimes if I'm being served something or I'm traveling and there's a specific item that seems like I should take a bite of, I will. And John, he rarely orders anything meat, when we're out, but like on a special occasion or something maybe. But in general, we're vegetarian at home and a little flexibility outside the home.
Yeah. Yeah, my family's the same actually. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But my kids are, they're both teenagers and don't at this point, it's kind of like become their thing that they won't eat meat when they're outside the home, and they get, I don't know, playful ribbing from their friends. So yeah. Okay, so let's see. We also had a question about kosher wine. Do you have thoughts, recommendations?
I actually have one if no one else does.
I don't.
It's not far from you, Erin. There's an amazing winery in Berkeley, based out of Berkeley, called the Covenant Winery. I think their grapes are mostly from Napa and Sonoma, but they're an urban winery. They have this like gorgeous facility, and their wines are really, really top notch. I'm not sure how available they are everywhere. I got some shipped to me in New York at the beginning of COVID, because it was like Passover was 2 weeks after when COVID started. And everybody was like, where am I going to get wine? Where am I going to get matzah? But you can buy them in a more leisurely way now, and they're really worth seeking out. It's Covenant Winery.
Yes, I am putting that URL but I don't think I did a very good job of it in the chat. Covenantwines.com, it looks like. All right. Sorry?
I said that looks right to me.
Yeah. Were there any other thoughts on kosher wine or recommendations?
I would just like to say that there must be people out there like me. I live for grape juice during Passover. I swear I drink like 7 cups of grape juice. So I would just like to say, give grape juice a chance as a grown-up. It is so bad for you, but so good.
Do you go for like the Manischewitz, or do you go for like a different type
Oh no!
of fancy grape juice?
We always have Kedem. Kedem, think that's how you get them. The purple stuff in the grocery store. And my sister and I just like keep that grape juice coming all night long. It's the best.
I love it.
So what about, Lisa would like to know, what about artisanal matzah versus conventional? Any thoughts?
I'm gonna let you guys chime in for that.
I have one thought, which is that when it comes to doing like cutesy projects, such as the one that I just showed you, it's a little easier to work with the conventional matzah. I also prefer the taste. I think you're talking about like the shmura matzah, I think. I mean, if there's more artisanal options, I would love to try them. That sounds wonderful, but I don't really like the taste of that shmura matzah so much. So I always opt for the whatever's in the box, the small box. That's what I prefer. But
There is
it's just
also,
a personal preference.
there's a company called like the Matzah Project, I think, that makes an artisanal matzah. It's not shmura, the round stuff. It's actually a square. It has like a cute, like old bubby on the cover. But I don't think it's kosher for Passover, which is kind of wild. So
I agree.
it's really delicious, but I can't eat it on Passover. So I save that for the rest of the year. And then I just like, like Yehuda or Manischewitz straights, like one of the old school ones. That's what Passover tastes like to me. And I love it.
We've been buying also like both kinds, gluten-free and regular matzah in a box. And I find that I actually really, we don't keep gluten-free at home, but I find that I really like the gluten-free matzah. It's kind of extra crispy. I don't know.
And saltier.
Saltier, yeah.
Yeah, I like
Saltier.
gluten-free matzah too.
Dory comments, Rebecca, that she found light Kedem grape juice this year, half the carbs and sugar. So there you go.
Incredible, because I plan on downing all of it. So I'm actually going to look that up. So thank you so much.
And then Emma says, we're literally eating some Matzah Project matzah right now because we didn't realize it wasn't kosher for Passover. So Leah, thank you for giving them that heads up.
It just feels like it would be a really good investment for that company to just make it kosher, but whatever.
I guess they're in the matzah year-round tribe, which that's the thing too.
All right, we have a couple just sort of more general comments. So Judy says, Erin, I'm a registered dietitian and culinary nutritionist and love your books. I recommend your recipes to my clients because they are so easy and so simple to prepare without compromising flavor. They are so approachable. Your books are so pretty and they look great on my kitchen shelf. And there were several other comments in the chat as well about the art in your books, Erin. Do you have... I know as someone who sort of observes cookbook publishing, that kind of thing can get really hard to get included in books. And so how has that been important to you? And congratulations, I guess, on getting all that artwork in your books.
Yeah, I think it was just part of the deal from the first book. So this is my fifth book. Yeah. And really from the onset, it was just understood that it was going to be full color every single page. So I have 256 pages that I can do anything I want with. So there's not even a single white page. Even my end papers. This is a photo I took of an orange tree in Sacramento, California. And even this would maybe traditionally be a white page, but I just did a watercolor wash on it. I paint everything on paper and then I scan it. Even just the copyright page is a photo right here off the deck. But the way I work with the illustrations is that I paint on paper and then I overlay separate layers in Photoshop. So it's a handwriting layer, a watercolor type, this is the headers. I'm writing with watercolor on paper and scanning it. And then these are all separate layers with the different, the onions in the dish, the garlic in the dish, the handwriting is a separate layer. But I'm always looking for ways to incorporate ingredients and color. So every single spread is full color.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think my first book might be a few pages fewer, but then I just really wanted to include more photos, and they let me up it.
Yeah. Oh,
So
that's great. Well,
yeah,
and I mean, it's such a distinctive part of just, I feel like your overall authorial voice, you know, to have the art as well as the beautiful words and the great recipes. So they're great.
yeah.
Such a
But
pleasure.
I'll show you one more. So I try to incorporate the art in different ways, also just a little bit. Like, so these illustrations on the cover, I often print them on fabric. So actually, this apron I'm wearing is the watercolor illustrations from the cover of the book, and I printed them on fabric. And this is another photo I took of some ferns. I'm always making clothes for myself out of my art. But anyways, this, like, in the background here, this is my color illustrations that have been printed on fabric onto a tablecloth, and then I photograph on top of it. So sometimes it's actually like artwork in the shot. Sometimes it's like a piece of paper painted in the shot, and then sometimes it's digitally added. So like these are all kind of like digitally added right here. But I even did some of the pottery. I took a pottery class when I was pregnant, and even used some of the bowls that I made to shoot on. So I love just like the books are just like one big art project for me. I love to have my hand in all of it, and my publisher lets me. But that was sort of like the deal right from the get-go. And they, like, I lay out every single page. I set the type, everything. Like, I create the whole thing, and then I hand it over to them. And I have a designer at Abrams that, you know, really makes everything, tightens it all up for me. But I get to do all the things. I get to shop for the vintage dishes that I shoot on, and style all the photos. I take all the photos of the food. Yeah, so a big art project.
Yeah, they're wonderful. So we have one more question. Judith says she's serving many dishes from your books this Passover: broccolini with pine nuts and cheese, blueberry pecan salad, stuffed avocados with pomegranate seeds, etc., trying lentil meatballs and vegetarian dinner. Family is kvetching about no kitchen soup. Oi, we'll make matzo balls. Help. So I think she's looking for some input on the lack of chicken soup at her Passover dinner. So Erin, do you have, or any of you, do you have thoughts on that and suggestions?
Well, so Leah, I thought it was so interesting that you wrote something about how there's not vegetable stock that's kosher for Passover that's easy to find. I don't know. I'm gonna let Leah and Rebekah take that one.
Is the issue that it's not vegetarian, or that they don't want, or she doesn't want to make actual something that's in the realm of chicken soup? Because I'll say two things. If you do want a vegetarian option of a chicken soup, in one of my other books, the Jewish Cookbook, there's a vegetarian chicken soup recipe. I'd be happy to share it with you if you get my email after. It's easy. I think I could just send it over to you. But if you don't want to go the chicken soup route at all, but you want some place to put your matzo balls are surprisingly delicious in classic beet borscht, which you can make vegetarian very easily. Hot borscht, not cold borscht. There's two different versions. But there's this place in New York City called B&H Dairy. It's like a vegetarian, old school Jewish restaurant. And they have these like 7 vats of soup going at all times. And one of them is vegetarian chicken soup, and one of them is borscht. And my husband, Yoshi, started the tradition of ordering borscht with a matzo ball in it. And I swear to God, it's like the most delicious, unexpected combination. So you could go that route also and just like shake everything up. But if not, contact me and I'll send you my recipe for pretty convincing vegetarian chicken soup.
Great.
I think that is a great answer, and I have nothing to add. We just eat matzo ball soup without chicken in it. So we're just, in my family, we're just drinking grape juice and broth and nothing else. No, we do have chicken, but it's separate. So I don't know what to tell you. I think that was a great answer. What she said.
All right. Well, we are finishing up. I wanted to make sure that Leah, I know you have a book coming out soon, or you're working on a book. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm working on a book about Rome, the Jewish cuisine of Rome, but it's not out till March of 2023. So we have
next spring. Okay, I was gonna say, I was just looking at fall books and I didn't see it. So
yeah, no, it's in progress.
Okay, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Rebekah, there were a couple of comments in the chat that you need to do an entertaining book. So are we going to see that from you, or do you have anything in the
Yes, you will, but not yet. But
Okay.
one day. But thank you for whoever commented that. Thank you.
And Erin, I don't want to put you on the spot because you just released a book and probably just want to like take a nap now, right? You're not ready for the next thing yet.
Don't
Is
have
there
anything
anything?
works yet. Not
Yeah.
another book, anyways.
Okay. All right. Well, there were some comments that you should release those aprons.
Oh,
Put them
yes,
out
working on. That's sort of my next project. Instead of signing on to another book, I'm working on artwork on
Oh my
fabric.
gosh.
Perfect.
I will order one of these.
Yes, I will too.
You have a ready audience, I think, for that already. So yeah. Thank you so much, all of you. This was so much fun.
Thank you
And
so much, Book Larder, for having us.
Oh my gosh, it was my great pleasure. And thank you everyone for tuning in. As I said, this has been recorded, so it'll be up on YouTube by Friday morning, I would say at the latest. Thank you everyone. If you're celebrating Passover, happy Passover. Is that what you said? Is that the salutation?
Yep, that's
Is
what
that the right
Yeah,
salutation?
you got
it. Okay. All right. And thank you everyone, and stay safe and healthy.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.